I'm actually quite thrilled to be integrating this talk and presenting about educational in this forum. And I'd like to introduce, we've got a panel of incredible experts, people who don't just talk the talk, but actually have demonstrated through their decades of experience. And we've got Dr. Tammy Tempelhof, who bills herself as a child, adolescent, and parent psychologist. I'm actually really interested to hear that part about the parent psychologist. It resonates quite well with me, because usually you'd say an adult, but this is specifically a parent psychologist. We've got Dr. Renee Mills from Sydney, who's going to be speaking, and she is an author, a speaker, a presenter, a clinical psychologist, and she's got a specific expertise in anxiety. And about Dr. Shimon Waronker, this is a man who's done the set. He's been an Army intelligence officer. He was a principal teacher in some of the most scary, most dangerous schools in the entire America. And now is the principal of Yeshiva in Beth Rivka. And he's, I can imagine it's somewhat less scary in Yeshiva in Beth Rivka than it would have been in New York. But actually, I'd like to start with you, Dr. Waronker, if that's okay, and I hope you're unmuted. You've really seen a lot. You've seen easy kids, difficult kids. You've seen murder in the classrooms. You've seen shootings in the hallways. Could you tell me, is there anything specific that you can point out as a parent that can do the best for their child wherever they're currently holding in life?
Thanks, Rabbi Greenbaum. It's really good to see you. Tali, you ran an incredible program. I mean, I don't know what to say. I've been educated in so many ways in this program. I think that if I were to give one piece of advice to anyone here, either as a parent, grandparent, makes no difference, a person in leadership, when you're thinking of your children, the one piece of advice I would give, if you want to bring out the best in them, is believe in them. You have to believe that they can do things. You have to believe that it's possible. If you don't believe in them, they won't believe in themselves. It'll be very difficult. They're almost finished before they start. Children have a natural curiosity. Children want to be able to accomplish things. Children want to take risks. And oftentimes as parents, we don't want them to take those risks. We're afraid that they may fail. We're afraid that fall may be too hard. This is where I think parenting then starts going in the wrong way. When parents start saying, well, maybe you shouldn't do that, or maybe that's not a good choice, so to speak. Granted, there are some things like crossing a road without looking. Yeah, bad choice. All right, so we're not talking about that. We're talking when a kid wants to do something and the parent hesitates because the parent doesn't think the child can do it. This is where my advice is: believe in the kid. Be their biggest cheerleader. Be on their side. Okay, so they may not make it. They may fail. They may plots. But you're with them when they do. And you never stop believing in them. If you do that, I assure you, you will bring out the best in them. If you trust them, if you believe in them, that's what they need. They need that from you as a parent. By the way, it helped in being a leader of one of the 12 most violent schools of New York City. I had to believe in the kids. I had to believe in the community. If I didn't believe in them, if I thought, oh, you guys are just a bunch of violent thugs, and that was my belief in them, they would have remained violent thugs. If, on the other hand, I believed that, no, they were great, they were divine, they were precious, they had great potential to change the world, well, then they started believing in themselves, and that changed their lives.
That was fascinating. I'd like to come back to that. But meanwhile, if I could go to Dr. Tempelhof. Tammy, you bill yourself as someone who develops the child as well as the parent. Is there anything you can actually point out that you would say that some kids fall by the wayside, some kids bounce back? How is it that you can help develop the child? What can parents do to turn them into strong, resilient adults?
So that's a really good question. So really it's about thinking about, resilience is definitely the buzzword of the moment. How do we actually, help our kids become more resilient. And I think one of the first ways to think about it is thinking about helping them to express their feelings. So not only express their feelings, but know what they are feeling. And that's both positive and negative feelings. There's over 27 different feelings in the world, and about half of them are negative feelings. So it's really important to know that it's okay for our kids to experience negative emotions. In actual fact, it's actually really healthy, and then that is how they build resilience. So actually being able to express our feelings, both men, both women, grandparents, parents of all ages, I think it's actually a sense of strength and courage to be able to really acknowledge your negative emotions. So a big way to do that is to help the kids recognize when they aren't feeling good, not to feel like you always have to make it better and say, oh no, you don't feel that way. It's not good to feel angry. We want them to know that it's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel sad, that we all have that. To be able to sit with that, and then that way is to be able to grow from there. And then, I think COVID's shown us that we all kind of worry, are our kids resilient? Are we resilient? Can we cope with all these scary thoughts that come into our head? But for majority of us, we've all got through it in different ways. And it's really given us a way to look at taking a situation that is really challenging and looking at the positive experiences.
Thank you. And if I can, from one buzzword to another, so you spoke about resilience. Dr. Mill, I've been wondering about the latest buzzword of self-determination. What does that mean? Does it really mean something at all? And how do you, if it does, could you tell us how do you develop it in your children?
Thank you, Dr. Greenbaum. Well, unfortunately, it's not a buzzword, and it's not a new word. It actually came into being in about the 1990s when Desi and some other researchers were working in organizations, but it sort of coincided around the time of the beginning of helicopter parenting. So it hasn't become a buzzword. It's actually something that parents are very scared to talk about or to think about, and I'll explain what it is in a minute. Because since the mid-1990s, there's been this move to be protective of kids, to be helicopter parents, and it's linked very much to the increase in anxiety from the middle of the 1990s, and that's one of the theories, only one theory, but why children's anxiety has increased. So the difference is that with the helicopter parenting or lawnmower parenting or overprotectiveness, whatever you want to call it, it is what everyone here is alluding to. People are afraid of failure. People don't want their kids to be unhappy. People want to protect their kids from everything. Whereas self-determination is actually, as Shimon was saying, believing in your child, but it is not only believing in them as a human being having value, but believing that they have what it takes. They have resilience. They have inner strength to cope. And there's a fabulous book called The Blessings of a Skinned Knee, and it sums it up that it's okay to fall, and you have in you to make your own decisions. You have in you to be self-directed. So self-determination means that instead of parents being what I call policemen, get up, come for breakfast, get dressed, pack your thing, have you done your homework, it's you step back and you actually work with the child to be part of the solution. You work with the child to take responsibility, use clocks and timers. You do all kinds of things that the child takes mastery of themselves as much as is age appropriate. And sometimes they will fail and sometimes they will make mistakes, and we help them to cope with that. But we need to step back and stop being policemen and caretakers and really allow them to be self-determined. And sometimes, and it was touched on in the Nachas discussion in the beginning, sometimes they, and I'm not talking about halachic things, but they will make decisions, that don't always resonate with us or isn't our first decision. But part of self-determination is, we might want them to be sporty and they want to play the violin. And it's about really allowing them to flourish and be who they are, and to make, as I say, in an age-appropriate way, as many self-directed decisions as they can, and to take responsibility for making that happen.
If I can ask a follow-up question then after what you just said, so where is the role of the parent to guide the child? I mean, when is it okay to say, you know, you're on your own, and when is it okay to help and push them in the direction? Dr. Mill?
That's a very good question, and it's a very common question. You are always the guide, but you don't control and you don't make the decision. So, for example, what you would do is if a child, you know, you sit down, for example, so there's certain things like hygiene. So you would actually tell the child, you have to brush your teeth every day. It's not negotiable. But the self-determination is, but you need to take responsibility for it. You know it needs to happen. And you work with the child to find ways, as I said, clocks, timers, reminders, charts, whatever's going to help them. And it might be a slower way, but you don't have to get your child every day, tell them to brush their teeth. You help them to be self-determined. So you will guide them that this is an important value and this is what they need to work towards, and those things are not negotiable. If it's something like violin or sport, you have discussions and you look at the pros and cons together, and you might go and talk to people about it. There is, I always say, parents are like the US at the UN. We have a veto. You know, there's a lot of democracy and everyone can vote, but at the end of the day, as a parent, we have a veto. So anything that's dangerous, you can say no. Anything that you really think isn't good for the child, you can say no, and you do guide. If the child isn't doing their homework, you might sit down and talk about working towards collaboratively how they can take charge and do their homework. But you guide them that it's important to do your homework, but I'm not going to take responsibility. I'm going to help you get to the point where you are responsible for your homework. Does that make sense?
It does, but actually, here I'd like to actually turn this now to Dr. Tempelhof. Tammy, Renee was talking more about the veto power. What would you say then if you as a parent adduce there's some specific skill set that your child has? They might be great at sport, they might be great at art, but they're not passionate in it. Is it okay to actually to push them or chivvy them along in the direction which you actually think is in their own good?
So I do agree with Renee in a lot of ways, in all the ways. I thought that was an awesome answer. And it's a really hard one. If you're feeling like, you know, but my kid just is so naturally talented, you know, at playing the piano, for example, but they just aren't interested in it. What do we do? And I think it's about guiding, but really being aware of that. If you're passionate about something, you're going to want to do it for longer, you're going to enjoy it for longer, and you're going to go with it for longer. So it can be about, you know, looking at, well, how can they maybe incorporate something that they're passionate about in with the talents of piano, or maybe even slowly guiding them in different ways. I think it's important to look at why aren't, you know, if they're really good at something and they're getting reinforcement for it, why aren't they really wanting to do it? There's probably something going on behind the scenes that may be pushing them away from following this thing that they're really good at. Because usually if we get reinforcement for something and we're good at it, then we want to do it. So I would probably take a step back and think, well, why don't they want to do it? Is it something that we as parents are doing, or is something bigger in society with their friends? And then you can kind of see and self-direct and help them to be guided to do it.
Okay. And what about you, Shimon? I mean, I know you're really you're talking about empowerment, and you're talking about, you know, developing the kids and believing them. But what about when you flip the line? Is it okay to praise them? Is it okay to flatter them? Is it okay, you know, we talk about building self-esteem. Is that something that you encourage, building self-esteem for its own sake? And if it is worthwhile, how would you go about it?
Rabbi Greenbaum, this is, you know, in following up on what Tammy was saying, is what are some of the things that actually, if a kid is good at it, what makes them sort of stop? Carol Dweck out of Stanford did a really, really interesting study in which she had one group of students, and she said, "You guys are brilliant. You're so smart. You're amazing," apparently in terms of the self-esteem. And then she had another group of students. She said, "You're working really hard. Continue working. Keep it up. Don't give up. You can do it. I believe in you." What she found was something really quite fascinating. What she found is that in the first group of students, the students were more likely not to take any risks. So in other words, the second group of students who are told to work hard, that we believe in you, not that they're smart, but that they should work hard, they were 90% more likely to take greater risks. In addition to that, what she found is that they outperformed the first group by 25%. And so what she found is sort of the difference between the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. Whereas the fixed mindset says, if I'm smart and I'm here, right? If I make a mistake, well, maybe I'm not so smart, you know? So I don't want to lose my smartness. So if you're telling me I'm smart, I want to remain smart, so I won't take the hard choices. Whereas in this second case, the growth mindset, when you believe in them and you believe they can accomplish it, they work hard, what ended up happening is that the students flourished. And so the self-esteem is really the pride that they build inside them. I just want to refer back to Rabbi Gutnick at the beginning. He serves in the army, on the Australian Army. There he is, standing tall and proud in uniform, you know. And he was drilling for 12 hours in a day. I know, I remember those days. And, you know, not that I recall them fondly, I just want to say, but the soldier starts believing in themselves after all that hard work. They believe they can do things, that nothing is impossible. That is ultimately what all the soldier training is, so that the soldier can feel, I can do anything. I can even go out there and in a hailstorm of bullets and I'll make it. It's that kind of belief in oneself. That can only happen after you work really hard and people believe in you and you believe that you can do it. And this is sort of the thing that we're all referring to, that Renee is referring to, in terms of that, you know, self-determination. If a kid believes they can do it, they'll be able to do it. More than likely than not. Okay, so they may fail. But the thing is, going back to the self-esteem, don't use language like you're bright, you're smart, or you're beautiful, or, you know, if say words like that are descriptive. I noticed that when you did X, this was the result. Or if you're, instead of saying beautiful, you can start describing, I like the way your hair is contrasted with the earrings that have 7 diamonds. You know, it refer very specific to specifics that really bring out the joy in the person who took the time to make themselves so that they could be presentable. So it's just make sure that when you are going to praise someone, be very descriptive. Don't use a word such as beautiful or intelligent or smart. Praise them for specifics.
Okay. So if I could just point out, all three of you have spoken so far of what you as a parent do for the child, how you develop the child, how you give the child, or how you take your hands off and step back. But is it okay for a parent to share with the child their own foibles, their own inconsistencies, their own struggles, their own negative emotions? When is it too much sharing, or when is it actually helping a child see, look, nobody's born perfect and it's time you too could turn into somewhat of a normal human being eventually? Tammy, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, so I think that that's really well related to, in terms of talking, when we're teaching the children to talk about their feelings. The best way, I think, to teach anyone anything is through modeling it through our own behavior. So I really wholeheartedly believe that it is more than okay to show our children or our grandchildren and model that we do experience hardships and that we are struggling with things. At the same time, though, I think it's really good to model and to be able to sit with that, but then also to model, okay, what do I do to overcome this? Or what do I do when it is getting a bit too hard? So, you know, you don't want to burden them with adult problems. Absolutely, they do not need to completely be burdened with all the adult problems of the world, but at the same time, giving them the ideas of knowing, well, when I have an issue or when I have a concern, I can sit with that uncomfortable feeling. And I know that my mum, my dad, my grandparents, adults also go through that. I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who has this yuck feeling. And then giving them the ideas from them, seeing what you do to cope, from you doing, you know, there's a idea of strength-based parenting. So you're looking at the strengths of the children. And then you're also modeling it through your own ideas. So, you know, as has been mentioned, in terms of not talking about the specific traits, but just their strengths. You know, you use good judgment today when you decided to pack your bag. You're not saying, oh, you're amazing at getting ready. You're really getting them to understand. And then when you do stuff, you also can model to them what are strengths, what are weaknesses. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and we can work on both of those to help our kids.
Okay, I like that idea. So you've actually shown the child, you know, I've had struggles in my life, I've overcome them, I've developed myself, and hopefully they'll pick up on that. Renee, what would you say then? In every life, some rain must fall, so sometimes there is failure. How do you help your child cope with that degree of failure? How do you help them pick themselves up again?
Well, I think it's quite important, you know, this is also another discussion about where everyone gets awards and nobody fails. And it's a very difficult thing to talk about. But if you focus, as Shimon was saying, on character traits and strengths, then there isn't really such a thing as failure. And it is obviously a very Jewish idea that we always need to grow. So the way that I look at it always is, what have you learned from it? How is it a learning experience? And you can always learn something in terms of personal growth. So even if you fail a test, you can learn to be a good sport and to be happy for somebody else. Now, you don't do it in the moments of failure. It's quite an important thing to have it as the culture of the family, that everyone's talking about, what did I learn today? How did I cope with that insult? Or what did I learn when I didn't come top of the class as I normally do? Or this is what I felt when I didn't make that, but what can I improve? So it's all about the growth. And as long as a person feels they're growing, whether it's just in midot or character, or they are actually growing in skills, it is never a failure. So one tries to drop that word and rather look at, I didn't do well in the test in terms of marks, but there's always something that I achieved. And even if it's just insight that I need to work harder, or as I say, it's being a good sport, or it's now I need to ask for help, or it's now I need to share my feelings about how I feel, there is always something that each of us can learn from when we are struggling with something. And the focus is always on the growth.
I just got a WhatsApp message. Someone said, what was the resource that Shimon mentioned about the fixed versus the growth mindset? I believe you said it was Carol Dweck, but could you mention any specific book of hers or any specific article if someone wants more information, Dr. Waronker?
Oh, she's written many research articles as well as books. If you just Google Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, she's a professor at Stanford University. She really leads the movement of growth mindset versus fixed mindset. But you can also look at Dr. Feuerstein's work in Israel, who also spoke about malleability of intelligence, in which he took, for instance, a Down syndrome child who earned a doctorate in psychology. So I'm saying it's incredible what the growth mindset can do, and really it can bring out the best in all of us, and see the gems. You know, so I want to add one more thing. Rabbi Greenbaum, you're a shliach of the Rebbe, and here the Rebbe believed in Jews going out there and changing the world. And if you look at other Jewish communities, they were very scared of sending people into non-Jewish areas or areas barren of Judaism, because they could lose their Yiddishkeit, and their children would lose their Yiddishkeit. And yet, the Rebbe really believed in you and believed in his shluchim, and such a strong belief that you could do it. And look at the work that shluchim have done all over the world. They're really changing and transforming the Jewish neshama across the world because of that belief that the Rebbe had in each and every one of you. I'm very proud to be being interviewed by a shliach of the Rebbe right now.
Thank you. It's an honor for me to be interviewing all three of you. If I could just ask then, you came here, you stepped off the boat and you were thrown into the deep end, although I think I've just mixed up some nautical analogies, because COVID struck about a month and a half after you got here. If we've only got a couple of minutes left, if you could each just take one short thought of where do we expect the struggles and the troubles are going to be over the next short while, specifically after we come out, please God, of the COVID crisis. What should parents be looking forward to? What should be parents doing, helping their kids with anxiety or something? Just one quick idea, if you could. Dr. Mill, would you like to go first?
I think, and it's really reinforcing what Tammy said, I think that a lot of kids are going to be impacted because there's a lot of fear. People don't know what the other side is going to look like, those kind of things. And I think we need to make space to talk to our children about it. We don't have to have all the answers, but they're often not going to initiate, and we need to keep talking about it in a safe way. And as we come through it, you know, they've all been through quite a lot out of school, in school, then there's been a few evacuations, and we need to make space for that. And I think that's going to be an ongoing issue for a good few months for our children to express what they need to express and to settle down.
Dr. Tempelhof, Tammy?
Yeah, I agree with Renee. I would also add, and what I've noticed in my clinical setting, is that a lot of kids, especially the more anxious kids, actually got into a bit of a rhythm at home. They didn't feel the anxiety of being around the social world, of being around people. So I think we need to be really mindful when we're all going back into this new world of ours, of how our kids are coping, what their worries are in terms of how they're feeling, also in terms of their own anxiety, about reconnecting with the world. What's everyone going to be like? Is it going to be different? Is it going to be the same? There's a lot of nerves around what they're going to say to their friends. So just being really mindful and checking in with your kids in terms of how they're going socially.
Okay, and Dr. Waronker, you led one of the first schools that had to close down, and thank God you led one of the first schools that reopened again, please God, very successfully. What message do you have, and what life lessons do you reckon we could all learn going forward?
I think it's been really hard on everyone, really, not just the children. For parents, it's been really difficult. They've had to assume the responsibility of supervising and motivating their children in schoolwork at home. They've at the same time as working in many cases. And so the stress level has been extraordinary. The toll of that stress level is still being felt. And of course, when the adults are stressed, and you know, what small things that are irritable in normal times, people who aren't stressed don't scream or yell. In stressful situations, people are snapping. And when adults are snapping at their children, it just helps increase the stress level of the children themselves. And so to be really mindful of one's own feelings and one's own stress as parents in the children's lives, understanding that we have to expand our patience and our flexibility and not allow to be irritated so quickly. Understand that anger and that irritation comes in Chassidus, we learn about the Nefesh HaBahamas, the animal soul. And that our godly soul needs to sort of be in charge and not allow that anger to come out, especially to our children. You see, the more angry we are to our children, the more nervous they become. The less angry, the more calm, the more even-keeled we are, the more we help our children. And so it's really important that when leading at home as parents, we try to keep even-keeled, to keep calm. This really helps our children cope with the stressors that exist. And there are a lot of techniques in terms of how to keep even-keeled and calm. I'll give you just a couple ones.
I think we'll have to.
We're out of time.
Thank you.
All right.
It's been
come and be a parent at our school.
Pleasure. Okay, it's been an honor, a pleasure. Thank you so much, Dr. Waronker, Dr. Mill, Dr. Tempelhof. You've been fantastic. I've really, really enjoyed it. I've learned from it. I hope my kids will appreciate it as well. I'd like to point out one last thing. I've been asked to remind everybody about next week, and we've spoken about Alan Dershowitz, and we've spoken about all the other, Mrs. Wolf, who's an extraordinary, heroic lady. That's resilience. but also as a personal friend of mine, who's someone who's an extraordinary speaker and a very, very successful man, Rabbi Shalom Patil, 3 critical life messages. It's next week, it's next Thursday, it's going to be fantastic. Thank you so much. Tali, back to you.